All right. Oh, we are recording. That was quick. What's going on, guys? My name is Brian Couch. I'm here with some other internet entrepreneurs, and we are all reading the book Pre-suasion. Dr. Robert Cialdini's first book in like 20 years or something like that. Independently kind of published. Awesome stuff. Basically, the concept is getting people to be more likely to say yes to whatever it is that your concept, idea, product, service, offer, business is all about before they even find out what it is, right? Having somebody more in line to want to comply, to want to buy, to want to join in, to want to fall in love with your idea before they know what it is, okay? So pre-suasion, it's the before stuff, and this stuff is so powerful. You know, I used to say, I used to think of it as like the pre-frame coming into the situation is really the Goliath of influence. This is the mammoth. This is the biggest part of it all. And if you look at all the top people, top performers in any type of area that influence would be helpful in, sales and just business in general, the top ones all have all the work done for them before they get involved. You know, us here, we all are kind of in a little bit in the internet marketing, network marketing, online entrepreneurship arena. And those of us kind of that are in the network marketing area, you know, if you think about it, the person, if Oprah were to join, you know, and start up a network marketing business, she'd be like a #1 income earner in like a week or something, right? Because all of that effort is done. All the effort that a normal person would have to go through to sell and convince and persuade somebody to join Oprah and her cause, that's already done, right? It's already done before she even gets there. Just because the amount of social influence and everything that she's done, everyone knows who her name is. So I think that's a lot of what today is. And so actually, I want to pass it over to Leslie and open this up for what her thoughts are and just kind of a bit about chapter 1. And hello, Nikki and Macavana. If you guys have video camera, that would be awesome. If not, that's totally cool. Leslie?
Great, thanks. I was just listening to chapter 2, so let me step back to chapter 1. The one thing that made the huge difference in chapter 2 was saying things like, and I just did this before I picked up my son, when all those people in the mall try and get you to take the surveys, and you say, do you think you're a helpful person? And then, of course, people are going to say, well, yes, of course I'm a helpful person. And then they ask you to take the survey. That was killer.
Yeah. So awesome. You're like, yeah, I'm a helpful person. Oh, cool. Well, here. And it like more than doubled the amount of people that did it. Yeah.
That was just amazing. So, you know, I think that this book is a little bit more positive, I would say, than the initial book, right? Look at Kat shaking her head, right? Because the initial book, it's everybody's out to get me. This is how you say no, that kind of thing. This is kind of building on the first book, right? He keeps bringing back, and it's really good that we are reading the first book at the same time, because he goes back to those 6 principles that he taught in the first book. And he's talking a lot about liking and things like that in the first chapter. I was remembering that. And I wrote something up, and I don't have my notes with me, but it was so important that if you can get people to like you, like that guy who they came in and they must have done a fire survey or something, right? And the guy came in and left his book in the car. And so while people were taking a test or taking a survey or whatever, he goes, do you mind, I forgot this important book in the car. Do you mind if I leave and just let myself back in? And of course, everybody said yes. But that immediately built trust in him, because you don't let anybody come in and out of your home. You only let people you trust come in and out of your home. So if you're building that trust, if you can find ways to build that trust before it's really earned, that was like phenomenal. How could we do that online? I haven't figured that part out yet, but building that trust and not doing it in a deceptive way. He talks a lot about ethics and not doing it in a deceptive way. Cults are cults, but that doesn't mean we do the cult thing. But how do we do it in a positive way but transform people's opinions before it's really earned. I thought that was amazing, that part.
Yeah, that's super, super interesting. I remember him talking about how, like, in the first one, it was more of like, he wrote it more for the casual person on how to watch out. There's all these influence principles being smashed and, you know, leveraged against you to pull money from your wallet and get you to join cult and all this kind of stuff. And this one is more written for, he realized, well, oh shit, nobody bought that for those reasons. The only people that cared about it were people looking to do the stuff that he was like warning against. So he's like, all right, well, let me get into this one. And then, of course, load it up with as much ethical considerations as possible. I thought that was pretty interesting. Well, cool. So if we're looking at chapter 1 here, the first one, he was basically talking about the importance of attention is important, right? The fact that you're paying attention to it makes it important. He was actually talking about how, you know, they were doing surveys for people, and I think it was like 30% of people said that 9/11 was one of the major things, that one of the 7 major events that happened in the last 70 years, or 3 major events that happened in the last 70 years, something like that. About 30% of people said that. And then when it came around this time of year, it's kind of funny because that actually just passed. That was yesterday. Then all of a sudden, that the number of people who said that that was important doubled. And they said they did that same survey a couple of months later when everyone's hearing about the news again and all this, and then it dropped back down to normal levels, you know? And then talking about how, like, the news controls, they don't do a good job of necessarily always controlling what we think, but they do an incredible job of controlling what we think about, right? Did anybody see that? I don't know. I actually read part of chapter 4 too, so I'm not 100% sure. I think this might have been chapter 1 when he was talking about how in the war or whatever, they put the journalists right in there with all the troops, right? Deep in the trenches with the troops. Nobody got to that? Okay, maybe that was chapter 3 or something like that, or 4 that nobody else read. All right. Well, cool. So I don't know if Kat or Bridget or Ann wants to come out and share their thoughts a little bit of what they've read so far. I'm going to pass it to somebody else.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, going off of even like what Leslie was saying, because we have, talked about the original Influence book and this kind of, approach of like trying not to get scammed, right? How to say no, because he talks a lot about that in Influence. And I like that he also explained kind of the context within it, what it was written, and kind of how people viewed social psychology and how it's changed. And now it's like behavioral psychology. It's like there's such a difference in it and how society views it. I guess it used to be viewed as kind of one of those things you just go to school for and you you're like in that crazy part of like the university, right? The social psychologist, right? But now it's like, in sales and all of this, it's so important to understand. And what instantly, and like I kind of understood right away, Brian, why you wanted to have a book club around this, but even reading from the introduction, the quote from Dale Carnegie, you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming genuinely interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get people interested in you. But then Cialdini takes it a step further and says it doesn't have to take 2 years. There's ways to do that in an instant, right? And that had me hooked, right? That had me hooked right away. And I was like, I know this is why I need to read this book. And it's also understanding, within the context of what we do in terms of online marketing, it's different too, because we're not, I mean, a lot of people, I guess, think about this in-person contact, right? And building relationships through personal contact through traditional, even network marketing or traditional sales. But online, I guess, is different because, you put up a presentation and someone on the other side of the world is waking up and viewing one of your videos. So it's different. But you can actually create these environments where all of these things come into play and create that trust, like that guy who got the keys to come back into the house. And kind of similarly, like someone putting an email address into a capture page, right? It's like, I mean, maybe email addresses aren't as valued as they were a few years ago because, people put their email address in a lot of things, but there's a lot of people that really, that act of doing that, there's a form of trust that happens there, right? And if we can create an environment where when that person puts that email address in, there's already levels of trust that are built, right? It's not just, those bait kind of capture pages, right? Where a person is just putting it in for no reason. But if there's something already established, right? That trust, which can be done, because I've seen it in our own marketing, right? Someone comes in and they're already so willing to, share about their life, but I never even have spoken with them yet, right? They maybe watched a video, put in their email address, but here they are sharing their life with me, and I have never spoken with them. So it's like, it's fascinating. I find it fascinating that, he talks about this from an angle maybe that's more applicable to us as marketers, as entrepreneurs, right? And how we can ethically kind of put it into play. So it really had me thinking. I'm really excited to read the rest of the book.
Yeah, me too. I know that one part he was talking about reminded me of some stuff that I learned from David Wood about in-person meetings. And so when you're in like a network marketing meeting, when it's all over, you turn to the person and you say, so what'd you like best about it? Right? Or even after we send them a link and they watch some videos and they're coming to us, ask them some questions, you say, so what did you like best about what you saw? Right? And now I always just consider that kind of a leading question. But he takes it a step further and looks at it a bigger scope, and he talks about it like as target shooting, like the CHUT, like a shoot, like shoots and ladders, a slide, because it takes them down the path of the way you want. And so, the cult leader would ask, are you unhappy? And it gets them to think of all the moments in their life where they're unhappy, versus somebody else saying like, oh, are you happy? And you think of all the moments in your life where you're happy, or saying, oh, do you consider yourself a helpful person? And then they think of all the times when they've been helpful, and they're like, yes, right? And then it goes back to that public commitment. They said, yes, they're helpful. And then also that private internal commitment, they confirmed their suspicions of, yeah, I'm a helpful person. And then immediately go into asking, well, can you help me out here? I got the survey, right? Well, I think, using that same type of thing, that focus, where you control the focus. And I used to always say, having trusted attention, right? Having people's trusted attention, that's like the scarce resource on the internet. The internet is like the number one, like the crazy, everything's coming at you from all different angles. You're doing things and all of a sudden a little notification pops up on this and then over here and stuff is buzzing, and because it grabs your attention, all of a sudden it's important, those types of things. If you can hold and maintain and grab that attention, and then build trust in there, that's really, that's your pull, right? That's your leverage. That's exactly how you're going to do all of this pre-suasion stuff before they even find out that you have an offer. That's awesome. So I want to pass over to Anne now and see if Anne could share some of her thoughts on chapter 1.
Well, Kat got a lot of them, but that's okay. What I really found, how the statistics. I mean, I took statistics when I went to university, and now how they've actually changed the words, and how his book was actually not even selling, right? Because his initial book way back in the day. So I might be mixing two books up here, but even how they've changed it over to changing the language of statistics and psychology, and how people are viewing it now. I mean, look at us, for example, and I'm not going to go too much into the book itself, but take a look at us, for example. We're studying this now to better ourselves. Even 5 or 6 years ago, people weren't looking at psychology and statistics in those manners to view how the rest of the world thinks, or how we all think. And actually, there's even a difference in how men and women think, right? And entrepreneurs and moms, and then you add those together. So I guess a lot of it, I'm just getting a lot of nuggets out of it, and I don't even know which one to actually just focus in on. Kat, like I said, Kat covered a lot of what I was going to bring up. So, but I'm going back and forth between both books, because you shared the one book with me, the Pre-suasion, Brian, when I went on Kindle and bought the other one. So I literally was reading one chapter and going back to the other chapter. So that's why I'm mixing things up on you guys right now.
That's all right. That's all right. That other book is good. It is a little bit drier. It's a little hard to get into. Certain parts of it can be kind of tough, but that information is golden. Just really the concept in general. was massive for me. The concept that that this stuff is learnable, right? That it's teachable. That is something that I had gone like almost all I mean, things were like, oh, you can either sell or you can't, right? Some people were just born with the gift of gab, right? It's a gift of being able to talk somebody into something and persuade something. And then to find out that, well, maybe it's not really a gift. They just learned a couple of these principles and I hadn't learned them yet. And so now by reading a simple book and then coming to these book club meetings and discussing it with other, successful entrepreneurs, I can begin to grow and learn these skills as well and hone in on. Maybe I happen to be kind of good at like one or two of them and really just rely on one or two of these 6 principles. And he actually introduces a seventh that actually we all use, the principle of unity, right? It's more powerful to be united than it is to be right. But anyway, that I can actually say, I can expand on these. And maybe instead of using like this one that I've always used as a crutch, I'm like, wow, there's so many different weapons, right? And the person with the most flexible communication wins, right? If you're more flexible in the way that you do things, you're more powerful. And so, just in general, the concept of that was huge. And then them taking, just like he said, what is focused is important. Him taking my focus from off of what I'm doing to what happens before I show up. That is massive. That is huge. And then I'm just like finding all kinds of instances of all the stuff that happens before I show up, and how that's already huge. So for instance, in my business, there's levels, like all these levels of filters, all these levels of hoops that people have to go through before they can really get to what I'm doing, right? And what I always thought is that's to filter out all those people I don't want, right? And to really, but then at the same time, the people that do take those, every time they take that, every time they go to the next step, they jump through one of those hoops, they pass through my filter, it like reconfirms inside them that this is the right thing. They're headed in the right direction, right? And it just makes everything that I'm doing more powerful. And so I can go back in there and look at those a little bit more and start dripping and dropping little pieces of what I'm learning in here. And so, well, I don't want to go too much into all this thing because I didn't give us, I was just super excited about this, so I wanted to get things up and going right away. So this next one, I can push it back a little further and we can have some more time to read things and digest and go over our notes. But I wanted to read what Bridget wrote here. She says, it's going with the belief. I like to help others automatically states that if I don't take this survey, I'm not helped. That's right. Yeah, they confirm publicly, just right there in front of you. And then also internally, I like to help other people. And in that, he introduces that other concept of a privileged moment, right? Where, right there, because they had just said that, they had just said it, I like to help others. In that little moment, you got that option, that chance that they can pounce, right? They offer, say, well, can you help me right now? Doubled, more than doubled their chances of getting that yes. Whereas if you wait an hour or somebody else comes in that wasn't a part of that privileged moment and asks the same question, way less chance, And then she said they're also able to predict a person's thoughts, actions beforehand and make their plan of help guided towards that. I think I missed what that was, the context on that one, Bridget.
Is that when he was reading the palms, Bridget? Remember that part, Brian? He talked about reading the palms and how he said this to the crotchety old man. He said, oh, I can't remember if he started with you're a flexible man, and then a couple hours later, after a couple drinks, then you're a pretty inflexible man, and the guy said yes both times. I really loved that story, the palm reading. It was pretty funny.
Yeah. Somebody can just say, yeah, it kind of the whole concept of that, the astrology stuff. I remember one time specifically for me, I had read one and I'm like, oh yeah, this is exactly me. And then I found out that I was reading the wrong one and it wasn't for me. It was for somebody from a different sign. I'm like, oh, well, shit, still fit.
But there's enough truth about almost all of us or almost all of us in a certain demographic, right? That I could see how that could be possible. Yeah. I'd have to spend more time, but I found that fascinating. It was really kind of fun.
The same way you can consider yourself an inflexible person and a flexible person. I think this idea of self is not so much a static thing that maybe evolves over time, but it's like hats we put on, roles we put. Because in certain contexts, I'm super flexible, right? And in another context, I'm super rigid, and I would not be a very flexible person. You could say stubborn, right? And so then if you ask me if I'm flexible, my mind isn't going to, like he talks about the Sherlock Holmes thing. Sherlock Holmes, he wrote about Sherlock Holmes, and like one of the big drivers that really, really worked well was how Sherlock Holmes would always identify things that didn't happen, whereas everybody else was always searching for things to do, because naturally that's what we do. Are you flexible? And I think of all the times that I've been flexible and say, well, yeah, I got all this proof, all these points of me being flexible. Are you inflexible? Oh, yeah. Actually, I can think of several times that I've been very inflexible. And so Sherlock Holmes, he's able to make this incredible literary device, this thing that makes these books so interesting, because Sherlock Holmes notices what they didn't, right? Like he goes in there, and the burglar broke in, and the dog didn't bark, right? Whereas everybody else is thinking he wasn't it. Well, since the dog didn't bark, well, that means that the dog's kind of familiar with him. Something's going on here. So he notices things that didn't happen. And that's a super hard thing for us to do, because, what we focus on is important, right? And so the only thing that's important is the one thing that we can think about at one time. And if we're multitasking, all we're really doing is focusing on one thing and then focusing on a different thing and then focusing back and just shifting the one source of focus. All we can have is one focus. Back and forth, and so it's actually inefficient. I think Tracy Walker was talking about that. She said, CEOs don't multitask. Multi-million-dollar CEOs don't multitask. When they're on the golf course, they're golfing. They're not doing anything else. Employees multitask and then brag about being able to multitask and continue to get paid, minimum wage or a little better. So yeah, and that there's science behind that. He said, I think it takes, I don't remember how long. There was a specific amount of time, he said, right, to completely change focus to something else. And if you're multitasking, you're basically losing that little gap of time every time you shift focus. That's not what his point was about at all. But that was something I was able to gather from it that I found kind of interesting. All right, so I'm not sure exactly how long I want to take these, but we've been going on maybe 20 minutes or so. If anybody else wanted to had any other remarks that they wanted to talk on this before we wrap up this chapter, which we can consider this one chapter 1. All right, you guys are awesome. Well, thank you very much for this. I'm going to end this recording. I'm going to blast this out. Make sure that you're registered in below the video. I've got a link to where you can put your email address in to catch up on all of them. If you want to join us in these book groups, we are going to be doing this regular. Pre-suasion is not the only book we're going to be reading. There are several other ones. This is something that's going to be an ongoing effort. So if you've enjoyed this, you want to learn, maybe you want to be one of these little Hollywood Square boxes. Is that what it's called, Hollywood Square? Yeah? Okay, cool. I think it was before my time. But if you want to be one of these Brady Bunch boxes or whatever else, where you can see a bunch, you want to be down there or over here or whatever, I can actually have like 500 people on this thing. So click on the link below here, pop your email address and name, fill out that form, and you'll get the information that you need to hop on our next book club meeting, or even find out what the book is about. Because if you're watching this a year or 3 years from now, we're definitely on another book. All right, guys, thanks for being here.